Welcome to this video. In the next 10 minutes, you'll get a complete overview of the Ukraine war, from the invasion in 2022 to the present day. We'll explain all the key turning points, the current developments, and the solutions currently on the table. Factual, concise, and understandable. On February 24th, 2022, Russian troops crossed the border into Ukraine from Russia, Belarus, and Crimea. Since then, it has been the deadliest war in Europe since World War II. Today, we take a sober look at the facts. How has the war developed? Where does it stand now? And what realistic ways out of the spiral of escalation are there? Chapter 1. Early resistance and first successes. Instead of a quick capitulation, Ukraine mobilized its population. President Zelensky remained in Kyiv and became a symbol of resistance. Within the first few weeks, it became clear that the Russian army was not as powerful as previously believed. The defenders halted the advance, and Russia withdrew from northern Ukraine in April 2022. The war shifts to the east and south. In the fall of 2022, Ukraine succeeds in recapturing large areas with surprise counteroffensives. First near Kharkiv, then in Kherson. It seems as if Ukraine could turn the tide, but the fighting becomes fiercer. The front lines longer and more fortified. Chapter 2. Trench Warfare in 2023. The year 2023 is characterized by attrition. Russia is laying minefields, deploying artillery and drones. Ukraine is launching a major counteroffensive in the south, but progress remains limited. Weeks of fighting yield only minor territorial gains. Both sides are visibly preparing for a long war. Chapter 3. New turning points in 2024. In February 2024, after months of fighting, the industrial city of Avdiivka fell, a severe blow to Ukraine. Moscow slowly but steadily gained ground in the Donbas. At the same time, Ukraine tightened its mobilization law. Younger men were forced to enlist, and it became more difficult to evade military service. Political wrangling rages in the West. But in April, the US Congress approves a $61 billion aid package for Kyiv, ammunition, air defense, and logistics. Europe launches its own support. The EU begins official accession negotiations with Ukraine, and NATO establishes permanent security support. In June, a major peace summit takes place in Switzerland with over 90 countries, albeit without Russia. Chapter 4. The War in 2025. In 2025, the war continues. Russian troops continue their gradual offensives in the Donbas, pushing towards cities like Kupiansk and Pokrovsk. Ukraine defends its lines, relying on targeted counterattacks, sabotage, and the use of its own drones, even deep in the Russian hinterland. A key innovation is Western fighter jets. F-16s from European stocks are being handed over to Ukraine. This will increase the defense capability against Russian missile attacks, but miracles are not to be expected. Without sufficient pilots, maintenance, and ammunition, the jets will remain merely a building block in a long war of attrition. Chapter 5. Human and economic costs. Human losses are mounting. According to the United Nations, by the end of August 2025, over 14,000 civilians had been killed and more than 36,000 injured. The actual toll is likely significantly higher. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers have been killed or wounded on both sides. Cities lie in ruins, the Ukrainian economy is severely weakened, and the energy system has been repeatedly crippled by rocket attacks. Chapter 6. Military factors today. Militarily, 3 factors determine the present situation. First, the air situation. Russia regularly attacks with missiles and drones, while Ukraine defends itself with Patriot, Iris-T, and NASAM systems, supplemented by F-16s and its own drone strikes. Second, the artillery duel. Russia produces large quantities of ammunition while the West ramps up production to close bottlenecks in Ukraine. Third, the political dimension. Ukraine is moving closer to the EU and NATO, while Russia is aligning its strategy with a protracted war of attrition. Chapter 7. Are there chances for peace? There is currently no official negotiation process involving both warring parties. The Swiss summit demonstrated that the majority of the world supports principles such as territorial integrity, nuclear safety, and humanitarian aid. But without Russia, it remains merely an appeal. Chapter 8. Scenarios for the future. So what options are on the table? Several scenarios exist. A ceasefire along the front lines, with international monitoring and prisoner exchange, could reduce suffering, but would freeze the conflict. A phased model that prioritizes security, energy, and food. Security could build trust, but would require concessions from both sides. A formula that links de-escalation steps such as troop withdrawals to sanctions relief is also conceivable. And finally, EU rapprochement itself could act as a peace dividend. The more Ukraine is institutionally integrated, the greater the chances of stability. But realistically speaking, there is currently a lack of willingness to make major compromises. Russia continues to rely on military pressure, while Ukraine relies on Western support and perseverance. The war is therefore likely to last for months, perhaps years. Chapter 9. Outlook and conclusion. In the short term, we see a continued war of attrition with isolated advances in the Donbass and further rocket attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure. In the medium term, the decisive factors will be how long the West maintains arms deliveries, how much production capacity increases, and whether political majorities in Washington and Europe hold firm. The human dimension remains paramount. Every month brings new victims. Even if a major peace agreement is still a long way off, humanitarian corridors, prisoner exchanges, and the protection of nuclear power plants could immediately alleviate suffering. The war in Ukraine has changed Europe, militarily, politically, and humanly. Its future depends not only on the lines of the front, but also on the ability of all sides to open diplomatic windows. The facts are harsh, the solutions complex, but even in a long war, there remains the opportunity to mitigate suffering and limit risks. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you enjoyed this analysis of the Ukraine war and would like to see more concise explanations of current conflicts and global politics, please support the channel with a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss any new videos. Also, share your opinion in the comments. Do you think we'll see real peace negotiations in the coming months, or will the war continue for a long time? Until the next video, stay informed and critical.